I'd like to go ahead and introduce John and what we're all about. I'll just go ahead and read our mission statement. This is actually right off of our website. Learning history to restore our future. America's Remedy is a nonpartisan, educational think tank focused on reestablishing America and her demi-sovereign states on a free and constitutional foundation. Our primary goal through education is to ignite a peaceful counter-revolution among the American people and to reclaim our lawful states' body politics, which were annulled by the Second American Revolution, also known as the Reconstruction Acts. Tell you a little bit about your speaker and our founder for America's Remedy, John Ainsworth. He's a husband, father of two. He took 2 years off of work in 1995 to study, to try to figure out what has gone wrong in America. He's got over 19 years of study under his belt, and he's been involved in over 15 court cases. He was involved in 1997 in reestablishing the de jure state of North Carolina. He was the host of Tiger, Truth in Government, Everyone's Responsible television for 8 years, co-host of Democracy and Demagoguery TV, numerous talk show radio shows, co-host on John Stadmiller's National Intel Report, Randy Yarborough's To Free America, Fife and Drum, guest on the Josh Tolley Show, and he's had numerous speaking engagements across the eastern U.S. One thing that we like to say is that it's not just history, it is America's Remedy. John Ainsworth.
Yeah, again, I've got a lot of information to go over. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I would like to just open up in a really quick prayer because I think the one thing missing in this country is a good solid foundation of what this nation was founded on. Oh, most precious Heavenly Father, we just come to you today, Lord. We are a tired, a confused, a deceived people, Lord, and we just ask that you give us the truth. You tell us you're going to send us a helper, the truth, the Spirit of truth that will lead us to all truth. Lord, we just ask that you give us the truth, that you help us to tune our ears to the truth, to have eyes to see and ears to hear what is really going on rather than what appears to be going on. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we ask you to be with us. We ask you to guide this talk. We ask you to guide our thoughts and our actions. We ask that you give us the bravery and strength to stand for what is moral, right, and just in this country once again. We ask all this in the name of our precious Lord, Jesus. Amen. Okay, let's just start with, again, kind of what I was saying a little bit earlier. Why are we here? We're frustrated. Nothing is making sense. Irrational thought is becoming rational thought. Our foundation is completely destroyed. We look at what our founders put into place, and we see that it's not here. There's two views on that. One is that it slowly has changed with radical Supreme Court rulings or bad legislation here and there, and I'm here to tell you that's not the case. What I'm going to show you is that there's a foundation of this. It took place in about a 2-year period that changed this entire nation from what we had to what we have now. And our problem is we constantly look back at what we had thinking we have it, and we don't. And fundamentally, the foundations are destroyed. It says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? And again, the righteous is morally right, justified, virtuous, and plenty of synonyms there. And in this crossroads that we live in today, we've got 3 directions that we can look at going into. We can go to revolution. I'm tired of this. Things are crazy. It's time to just hunker down, get prepped, because we're at a preppers convention. What are we preparing for? Are we preparing just to survive to the other side and just be alive on the other side when a new tyrannical government comes into place? Are we prepping for our own Alamo? I'm just going to hunker down, get a lot of guns, and then finally when they come, I'll just have a big barrage and we'll go out in a blaze of glory? Or do we want to stay the course, stay on the direction we're going in, get political action committees, hope we can get the right elected officials, hope you can get the right Supreme Court justices? How many people see a lot of solution in that? We're in a death spiral as a nation right now. We are in a death spiral. Or restoration. How many people would like to get back to the restoration of what this nation was about? Revolution. Is revolution lawful? Can be. The American Revolution was lawful because it was a remedy for the crown violating the rights of the people. Okay? What is the Declaration of Independence as a legal document? It's an indictment of the crimes committed by the Crown. What is the legal function between a government and a people? There's a reciprocal relationship, and that reciprocal relationship is the government is supposed to protect your rights in return for you giving it allegiance. The original North Carolina Constitution of 1776, the very first sentence says, whereas allegiance and protection are in their nature reciprocal, the one of right should be refused when the other is withdrawn. And the American colonials said, you are not protecting our rights. You violated the contract. We are and of right ought to be a free and independent people because you have violated this relationship. You're not protecting our rights. We do not owe you allegiance anymore. Okay, so that was a revolution that was lawful. Today, if we were to start a revolution, just because we're mad, would that be lawful? And the answer is no. You have to have a moral foundation. You have to have a legal foundation. So revolution, I don't think is, in this day, can be lawful, moral, or just. You may do it out of frustration, but that frustration isn't lawful, moral, or just. So what we're going to go to is we're going to go to the point of when this nation changed. I'm not going to go into the beginning of the war and the lawfulness of the war, which I can just really destroy that. I can destroy Lincoln. We're not going to do that. We're going to go straight to this legislation that destroyed the country. And it's going to be the Reconstruction Acts. And I don't know how many people have actually read the Reconstruction Acts. This is the Act of March 2nd, 1867. The Reconstruction Acts were the acts. Now again, I got to give a little bit of history here. The war was waged on the Union's part upon the principle that the ordinances of secession were null and void. You cannot leave the Union, okay, which I believe is wrong. But the North maintained that the Southern states were in rebellion to lawful authority. They were rebel states. They have never left the Union. And they actually put that in the congressional record as the object of the war, that these are states in insurrection. At the end of the war, they were considered back in the Union, to the point that all states, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, participated in amending the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery, in December of 1865. War's over in April. They're considered by Congress back in the Union, 1865, based upon the principle that they had never left. Okay? 1867, they changed the object of the war. They say it was for conquest, and we're going to annul the states. And this act right here annulled the state of Virginia that entered the Union as one of the original states. It annulled all of the southern states with the exception of Tennessee. The reason it did not annul the state of Tennessee is because Tennessee had adopted the 14th Amendment. The sole purpose of this act is to adopt the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment nationalizes citizenship. Let's just read a little bit of it. The very first sentence says, whereas no legal state governments or adequate protection for life or property now exist in the rebel states of Virginia, North Carolina, blah, 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 and whereas it is necessary that peace and good order should be enforced in said states until loyal and republican. Okay, they're loyal. Loyal to what? Loyal to the original treason. Loyal to the original overthrow. State governments can legally be established. And if we go to Article 5, Section 5 of the Reconstruction Act, here's what this is going to say. It annulled the state of Virginia. It said that anybody that participated in the state of Virginia, participated in the war, you're not allowed to vote. Okay? All the freed slaves could vote, and anyone that would say that they never participated in the war could vote. Okay, they're changing the body politic. What's the definition of a state? A state is a body of people who organize government, and they get to exercise that over an established jurisdiction, an established territory. A state is three parts: the people, the government under which they organize, the laws under which they organize under, and then the territory upon which their jurisdiction extends to. Okay? Congress is changing the body of people, and they're going to change them from the freemen of Virginia to national citizens, subject to Congress. Okay? So here's what they did. They annulled Virginia. They said, all of you people, you cannot vote. They said, and all the people that we say can vote, they're going to go in and they're going to get a new constitution. They're required to draft a new constitution, adopt it, send it to Congress, and once Congress says it is a good constitution, they'll say they're back in the Union, but they can't seat senators and representatives until they ratify the 14th Amendment and until such time as the 14th Amendment becomes part of the national Constitution. Now, I don't know how many people are familiar with the Constitution of the United States, but if you're looking how do you ratify amendments, does Congress have the power to annul states, create new bodies, and tell them this body is required to adopt it? If you consider that unconstitutional and unconscionable, you're right. But let's just read it. It says, and be it further enacted that when the people of any one of said rebel states shall have formed a constitution of government in conformity with the Constitution of the United States in all respects, and when said state, by a vote of its legislature elected under said Constitution, shall have adopted the amendment to the Constitution of the United States proposed by the 39th Congress and known as Article 14, and when such article shall have become part of the Constitution of the United States, said state shall be declared entitled to representation in Congress with senators and representatives. That's patently unconstitutional. The very first sentence, whereas no legal state governments exist, Congress has no authority. How many people have read the Constitution? Does Congress have the authority to annul states? What's the basic function between when a state, when people create a government? What's the relationship? When we created the federal government, it was for the benefit of the states, not to lord over them. It was to protect our rights. We're going to give them an army. We're going to give them a navy. We're going to give them all sorts of things to protect our rights, not to destroy our rights. This is the Joint Committee. How many have heard the Joint Committee of 15 on Reconstruction? This is the committee that went out at the end of the war to find out all the problems that were going on. Now, one of the things that we're told is that what the Reconstruction Acts were about was to give blacks civil rights, and it was only going to participate or deal with blacks. That's kind of how we're taught it now. And if you're against civil rights, you're against the 14th Amendment, you're against blacks. Well, let's go back to this time frame and see what they said. This is page 184. It says, and as has been said, he particularly desired, now this is John Bingham, who's on the committee, and he's given a little history of each individual, what they did in this committee. And it says, as has been said, he particularly desired to have the civil rights of the individual put into the special keeping of the national government. All your civil rights, where your rights come from, is going to be put into the keeping of the national government. And it is not too much to say that had it not been for his untiring efforts, the provision for nationalizing civil rights would not have found a place in the 14th Amendment. So this is, from that time, nationalizing rights. Where do your rights come from? James G. Blaine, he was one of the radical Republicans in Congress. And this is from his book, Political Discussions on the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was proposed in June of 1866. He gave this speech in August of 1866 in Maine, where his constituents were. Talking about, and what we're talking about is the very first sentence of the 14th Amendment says this. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So it's talking about this term, citizen of the United States. And in making this extension of citizenship, we are not confining the breadth and scope of our efforts to the Negro. It is for the white man as well. We intend to make citizenship national. Okay? Does that sound like 14th Amendment and civil rights and where your rights come from is for the black man only? It's for everybody. They're going to make it for everybody. He also says this, as the vicious theory of state rights had been constantly at enmity with the true spirit of nationality, the organic law of the Republic, the Constitution, should be so amended that no standing room for the heresy would be left. The heresy of states' rights. You had to get rid of it. Okay? He says the first section, right here, the first section of the Constitutional Amendment, which includes these invaluable provisions, is in fact a new charter of liberty to the citizens of the United States, is the utter destruction of the pestilent heresy of state rights, which constantly menaced the prosperity and even the existence of the Republic, and is the formal bestowment of nationality upon the wise federal system, which was the outgrowth of our successful revolution against Great Britain. Now again, this guy is for this overthrow, just like today. If you get one politician for Obamacare, they're going to say it's the worst thing on the planet. Others are going to be saying, oh, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. So that's what you've got going on right here. And he also says, talking about all these new state constitutions, and he says all these new state constitutions were ordained in the spirit of liberty, all prohibited the existence of any form of slavery, and all heartily recognized the supreme sovereignty of the national government as having been indisputably established by the overthrow of the rebellion, which was undertaken to confirm the adverse theory of state rights. He goes on. He says the opening section of the 14th Amendment settled all conflicts and contradictions on this question by a comprehensive declaration which defined national citizenship and gave to it precedence of citizenship of a state. So it's over your state citizenship. He quotes from the 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. These pregnant words distinctly reverse the origin and character of American citizenship. Instead of a man being a citizen of the United States because he was a citizen of one of the states, your state citizenship was primary originally. He says he is now made a citizen of any state in which he might choose to reside because he was antecedently a citizen of the United States. The consequences that flowed from this radical change in the basis of citizenship were numerous and weighty. How many people were taught this in school? Citizenship was nationalized. States' rights were abolished by Reconstruction. Well, did this go to court? Did the Souths take this lying down? Well, let's just do a couple of Supreme Court cases. This is Georgia v. Stanton, state of Georgia going against Edwin Stanton. The Supreme Court said a bill to restrain the defendants who represent the executive authority of the government, the military, president, from carrying into execution certain acts of Congress, inasmuch as such execution would annul and totally abolish the existing state government of Georgia, is not within the jurisdiction of this court. And here's one I want you to really pay attention to. This is ex parte McCardle. McCardle is a great case. This is an editor in Mississippi who wrote against the Reconstruction Acts in his newspaper. He was arrested, and he got a habeas corpus up to the Supreme Court. And if you know anything about the Reconstruction Acts, Andrew Johnson vetoed them all. The radical Republicans had a supermajority in Congress, enough to get over the veto, and they passed all the Reconstruction Acts over the president's veto. And so you got to remember that his veto, who do you think wrote the president's veto? The Attorney General, his lawyer, right? Well, what happened when the Reconstruction Acts, the McCardle case, went to the Supreme Court? The Attorney General, Stanberry, said he's already written an opinion against it. He can't take the opposite side. He refused to defend the United States in this action. And if you look at that last sentence, he had given notice to General Grant, in consequence of which other counsel had been employed. You go hire a lawyer. You got to find someone who believes in it. I don't. Okay? Who defended McCardle? This is Chief Justice, or former Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, Jeremiah Black. He was the Attorney General of the United States prior to the war, and his secretary. Do you think this guy knows the law? Former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. He said, it says, Mr. Black commenced his argument on behalf of the petitioner who had been charged with and arrested for an illegal violation of the Reconstruction Acts. It says a state election was going on which superintended entirely by the Army, which by means of bayonets drove one set of voters to the polls and drove another away from them. The whole thing was accomplished by naked terrorism. And when an unarmed and peaceful man expressed his opposition to such proceedings through his own newspaper, he was told he should not do so and was ordered into custody. Which of the two parties was guilty of intimidation, the accused or the accuser? It was said McCardle hindered Reconstruction. Congress desired that a certain constitutional reform of government should be adopted and submitted to the people for their decision, or it was submitted to a portion only of the people of Mississippi. The act of Congress made a show for the expression of approbation or disapprobation, approval or disapproval. McCardle was not among those who were in favor of that Constitution. This was said to be hindering Reconstruction, the commission of a crime which there was a right to punish. He says these acts of Congress admitted no shade of ambiguity. They were intended to deny the regular administration of justice to one section of the country. If these acts were valid and the trial by jury was abolished, then the trial by jury was abolished in 10 states of the Union and might be abolished in all the remaining when Congress might think proper. There was no chance of the people escaping from the body of this death except by saying that the Reconstruction Acts are null and void. He says no person charged in the exercise of power can ever perform anything valid unless he keeps himself within the limit of his grant. The agent cannot bind his principal beyond the scope of his authority. The corporation which acts outside the character can do nothing that is valid. This, be it remembered, is not merely a rule of jurisprudence, but is natural logic and universal application. It says, if appeals to public justice entrusted with the supreme power of the state, there never has been and never will be limited government to which this does not apply. Okay. Who defended Reconstruction Acts? Lyman Trumbull, senator out of Illinois. So he's one of the radical Republicans. He's defending the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts. He never defends the constitutionality. Basically, he says, I shall commence what I have to say by denying the jurisdiction of the court. So he just challenged jurisdiction. You don't have jurisdiction to hear this case. And he went on and he says, I've gone substantially over the ground which I intend to occupy. The positions which I have endeavored to maintain are first, that this court has no jurisdiction of the case because the Act of February 5th, 1867 did not authorize the circuit court to take jurisdiction of it. Well, what happened after this? Who was going to win? The Supreme Court accepted jurisdiction of it. They heard the case. It was argued for 3 days in the Supreme Court. He was the counsel. Well, he's a senator. What did he do? He went back across the street, went over to Congress, rallied the troops, and proposed a law that would take away the Supreme Court's ability to make a ruling on the case.
Which is legal.
But let's just watch.
I don't agree with it.
Here's the floor debates. Here's what he's saying. He says, in my judgment, there is no such great importance to be attached to it. It is a bill of very little importance in my judgment. And I wish to say to the senator from Maryland that the Supreme Court has not decided that any case is pending before it under the Act of February 5th, 1867. No such decision has been made, nor do I believe any such decision would ever be made, or ever would be made. He'd already argued it. The Supreme Court had already accepted jurisdiction of it. That's a bold-faced lie. Let's keep going. He says, now there's no such case that is pending in the Supreme Court, and there has been no such case pending in the Supreme Court. He pounded it out. Well, Mr. Doolittle out of Wisconsin called him out on it. He says, Mr. President, my honorable friend from Illinois seems to think that there is no importance in this measure, that it affects nothing and nobody, that there is no case pending in the Supreme Court which this case will affect, that it is a mistake and a delusion on our part to suppose that there is any such case under the law of 1867. Well, sir, if you be correct in this, why the great haste for pressing the bill? What does it mean? Sir, I apprehend that the honorable senator from Illinois is altogether mistaken in the view which he now presents, that this is a very important measure, that there is a very important case pending in the Supreme Court under the Act which it is now proposed to repeal. The honorable senator himself, as counsel in that court, calls him right out. You're counsel in the court. If I am correctly informed, with other counsel, made a motion to dismiss a case pending in the Supreme Court or alleged to be pending under this Act, and the court refused to dismiss it. We all know, the whole world knows, that this case of McCardle is pending in the Supreme Court, brought up on appeal under the Act of 1867 from the Circuit Court of Mississippi, and that case has been argued by eminent counsel, and that it is pending. It is important because this case involves the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts. It involves the constitutionality of these acts which have been passed by Congress. If there be no such case before the court, why does the honorable senator desire to pass a bill to take away jurisdiction of a case which does not exist? Mr. President, the truth is, and we may as well look it square in the face, it is because men know that these acts will be decided to be unconstitutional. That is the reason why they desire to take away from the court the consideration of the question. Okay, and I can tell you other cases, but I'm not. I'm going to go to a modern law journal. This is a landmark arguments, landmark case of the Supreme Court. And it says this about the McCardle case. It says, while the case was under advisement, Congress passed an act taking away the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court as defined by the Act of February 1867 in cases of habeas corpus, and the appeal was therefore dismissed for want of jurisdiction. McCardle was thereupon discharged, and no further attempt was made to test the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts. Okay? And this is what our position is. Test the constitutionality of the Reconstruction Acts. I'm going to go a little bit more on that in just a little bit. Let's look at what some of the court rulings have said about Reconstruction. Elk v. Wilkins, 1884. The persons declared to be citizens are all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The evident meaning of these last words is not merely subject in some respect or degree to the jurisdiction of the United States, but completely subject to their political jurisdiction and owing them direct and immediate allegiance. And I want to show a short slide, a short little movie here. if we did have national government or national citizenship, how much power would the federal government have over the individual citizen? If you nationalize citizenship, they would have an indefinite supremacy over all persons and things. This is what our founding fathers said would happen if it evolved into that. Was the 14th Amendment and Reconstruction Acts designed for the freed slaves, or were they designed to nationalize citizenship? That's what we've got to try to decide. Well, let's go to the writings. James G. Blaine, he was one of the representatives in Congress. He says, and in making this extension of citizenship, we are not confining the breadth and scope of our efforts to the Negro. It is for the white man as well. We intend to make citizenship national. Okay? He also said this in his books, in his autobiography. He says, as the vicious theory of state rights had been constantly at enmity with the true spirit of nationality, the organic law of the Republic, which is the Constitution, should be so amended that no standing room for the heresy would be left. Because get rid of state rights. Again, if you get rid of state citizenship, make everyone a citizen of Congress, there are no independent states. They're all composed of United States citizens rather than North Carolinians, South Carolinians, Virginians. Lawrence versus Texas, which struck down the sodomy laws, it violated the due process clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Roe versus Wade. State criminal abortion law violated the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. Stone versus Graham, it takes away the 10 Commandments, violation of the 14th Amendment. Abington School versus Shemp, same thing. Again, they get their power to make the ruling through the 14th Amendment. The idea of a national government involves in it an authority over the individual citizens and an indefinite supremacy over all persons and things. This supremacy is completely vested in the national legislature. But he said that's not what the intention was. But now that's what we've got. We have two directions we can go in. We can say, this is water under the bridge. Nothing we can do about it. So therefore, here we are. We've just got to do the best we can in this situation. But the problem with that is we're always looking at the original intent of the Constitution, saying we've got those rights when they're really overthrown by this legislation. What we've got here is what direction we want to go in. And this is what we were talking about earlier. We can do revolution. We can stay the course. What I ended that talk with, we can stay the course. Just accept it. Water under the bridge. Nothing we can do about it. How many people are satisfied with the direction America's going in? How many think there is any real remedy in staying with and this system correcting itself? We're in a death spiral. What about the budget? Is it going to get better next year?
No.
What about our morality?
No.
What about our liberty?
No.
Does staying the course, is it lawful to stay the course?
No.
Yeah. You have a moral duty. You read the Declaration of Independence, we have a duty to correct a wrong. Because is it moral, if you stay the course, you're saying, I'm handing my children a usurpation, a criminal act, to rule over them.
It's lawful.
Huh?
It is lawful to stay the course, but it's not moral.
No, it's not lawful. An unconstitutional act creates no law. It's a legal nullity. An unconstitutional act is a nullity. It only exists, it only gets authority from people who just won't obey it. There is no requirement to obey it. Is it just to stay the course? One of the things we've got here is, who are we? What did we have? Are we a moral people? Are we a moral people if we look at immoral stuff and say that's okay? Are we a just people? Micah 6:8 tells us, the Lord tells you what is good, O man, to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your Lord. He requires us to do justice. Is handing usurpation and criminal action and immorality justice? No. We have two worldviews that are fighting here. You have the worldview of the Christian worldview. You've got to decide, where does law come from? Does law come from God, or does law come from man? Or the humanistic worldview. Law comes from man. Humanism says law comes from man. The other says law comes from God. You got to pick. I'm going to do one more little quick video.
Man has a right to live by his own law, to live in a way that he wills to do, to work as he will, to play as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will, to eat what he will, drink what he will, to dwell where he will, move as he will on the face of the earth, think what he will, speak what he will, write what he will, draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, dress as he will. It was written by Anton LaVey. He was the founder of the First Church of Satan. And the only sentence I left off on that poem was the very first one, which says, "There is no God but man."
Wow.
So this is an atheistic concept. There's outside of God, there is no God. So as a man, I should be able to do anything I want, again, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. And again, this is a worldview.
It's pretty widely accepted, the majority of this.
It's pretty widely accepted. And here's another. This wicked morality is expressed in a brief statement found within a text called the Wiccan Rede. And here's the quote. "And it harm none, do what you will." In other words, if it harms no one, you should be able to do what you want. It's what we call humanism. A humanistic philosophy viewed as a non-theistic religion antagonistic to traditional religion, having a moral belief outside of God's laws. Now, our fight that we have here on earth is not against humans, it's against these two worldviews, these two philosophies. If you inject it into government and say our government's going to be based upon this concept of liberty and freedom, where's the limits? Where's the parameter? Whose reasoning? Whose ethics? Whose justice? Well, it just depends on whose reasoning, ethics, justice you're going by. Our founders felt that you had liberty under God. He said our Constitution was made for only a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Well, why is he saying that? Well, because if everyone is operating on the principle that we agree on a common moral foundation, that what God says we will not violate, that sets the parameters for it. Underneath that, we have authority to act freely, do anything we want, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. But as soon as you take that capstone of morality and God as a foundation for your society off, it's total anarchy, and it's a society destined for destruction.
There was a belief that I once held that we should be able to do anything we want as long as you don't hurt anyone. But that hurts society. That redefines your culture. It's just like with the transgender bathroom or the gay marriage, things of that nature. Oh, it doesn't hurt anybody, so they should be able to do it. So that falls right in that philosophy, doesn't it? Doesn't hurt me. Well, does it hurt the culture? Does it hurt the society? Does it hurt what we say is acceptable and should be taught to our children as what is moral, right, and good? Yes, it does. I'm going to go further on this website. This is off the First Church of Satan website. And there's that poem, and it's under the frequently asked questions of, do Satanists have a moral code? And all I did was read the satanic moral code. People have a right to do whatever you want. Okay? But look at the bottom. It says, Satanism has always favored the interest of the individual over the collective. Do what thou wilt. Do what you want. Should be taken literally. No matter what the source, dogmas and creeds are meant to enslave. Anton LaVey. And again, in their frequently asked questions, it says, he who believes in nothing will, well, when I say that, he who believes in nothing will fall for anything. The First Church of Satan says this, Satanism promotes individual sovereignty. How many individual sovereigns you see out there? Promotes individual sovereignty, the belief that every man and woman is the center of their own universe. Satanists live by their own rules and accept responsibility for their actions. We encourage anyone to read and study before committing to any religion, visit more than one ritual, from more than one priest, try more than one tradition. This is probably the only religion you're going to find where you can honestly say it's all about you. And aren't we supposed to be all about God? What can I do to advance the cause of Satanism? Whether you care to admit it or not, the next generation of Satanists will be the social activists or civil libertarians. Sooner or later, Satanism will have its equivalent of a Rosa Parks. And what is your position concerning satanic stratification? Satanism exalts man as God. That's where your law comes from, and declares the Satanists to be believed. Now, if man's God, What are the limits of what is right and wrong? It's whoever you can convince it. Did Hitler do anything? If man is the highest authority in Germany in 1932, did Hitler do anything wrong?
Everything he did was legal.
It was his moral view. But if you're under God, he violated a bunch of stuff. But if you take God out, he's the highest authority, just like Caesar, crucifying people lying the Appian Way. Okay? To say each man and woman, you are unique and sovereign, the center of a universe, however right. And how many have heard this concept? However right I may be thinking as I do, you may be equally right in thinking otherwise. You can only accomplish your object in life by complete disregard of the opinions of others. How much regard for the opinions of the population do the transgender people have? They have a complete disregard of your opinion. Okay? But that's a worldview. Understand what we're fighting. It's a concept. It's a belief system. Where does your law come from? Reconstruction has changed North Carolina and other United States from Christian-based governments to secular humanist governments. I'm not going to go through all this. We're running a little bit out of time here. Did y'all get a good grasp of kind of what Reconstruction was about? This fundamental change of going from individual states, states were state citizens, and now we're all national citizens. If you look at a voter registration application, you got to sign under penalty of perjury, you're a United States citizen. You get a driver's license, you got to sign under penalty of perjury, you're a United States citizen. Everywhere you go. The way this works is, if a United States citizen has a right in one state, he has that exact same right in any other state. So as soon as one state says, gay marriage is lawful, and it's lawful for a United States citizen to get married in California, New York, wherever, and that couple moves somewhere else, court case. My civil rights, my national rights were violated. You violated my 14th Amendment rights of nationalized citizenship. A United States citizen has a right for gays to be married in whatever states he wants. Now, could that have happened before the Civil War? Before the Civil War, if one state wanted to have abortion, they could declare it legal, no state not. You had state rights. Those people decided. After the Civil War, after Reconstruction, it's nationalized. You get your rights from the Civil Rights Act. You do not get your rights from God. And a lot of people try to confuse the Civil Rights Act with the act of black civil rights. It's not. It's for everybody. Anybody. And it's based upon the doctrine of equality. Everyone is equal. Is that what the Lord teaches us? Everyone's equal? Does he say that when you have a nation, you treat everyone equally, or does he say to treat everyone within your borders justly? You treat them justly. The doctrine of equality is satanic. Yeah. Okay, because it says that the atheist is equal to the Christian, is equal to the Muslim. The illegal immigrant is equal to the citizen. Because it's about humanistic equality. All humans are equal. And if you denote any difference in humans by saying, that black guy, you're racist. You saw something different than a human. Oh, that person, that gay couple over there, you're a bigoted homophobe. Because you didn't see them as human, you saw a difference. As humans, we are all equal. The doctrine of equality is a doctrine of destruction. And we have in this country, we can either stay the course or we can reestablish. We can go back to our foundation. Go back. Let's start challenging Reconstruction. And the way we challenge Reconstruction is by saying what Reconstruction did, annulling the original states, was invalid. That's what we did in North Carolina in 1997. We reestablished the original state, said we don't recognize the state created by Congress is valid. And that's what we're asking you to do. But if you want to come up here, you won't.
Give John a big hand. Well, I'm going to speed through this so we can hopefully have a
I'll be in my booth later.
Q&A here. Hopefully education leads to action. So I want to kind of wrap up the education part and go right into what is it that we can all do, and what is it that we have done also. What gives an unconstitutional act power? Anybody?
The gun behind it.
Huh?
The gun behind it,
Okay. Yep.
which means the federal government.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for something a little different. Who? Let me ask you this. Who gives an unconstitutional act power?
We do. The people.
Exactly. And what is it that we're doing to give it that power?
Accepting.
Accepting is one word. I'm going to go with obedience.
Well, they would like that.
The order of authority originally, of course, was God on top, state citizens, and the states, and the federal government on the bottom. Of course, with Reconstruction and the 14th Amendment, we've completely flipped the arrangement so that the federal government is now over the states, and there's no state citizens anymore. They're nationalized, and God, we just want to kick him off the bottom. So this is the current arrangement. This is a revolution of our government and the original way that the founders set things up. So how do we reverse a revolution? How do we reverse a revolution? What would be the reversal of a revolution?
Education. You have to educate first.
Starts there.
Okay.
Another revolution.
Yeah, it's definitely, what's that?
Another revolution.
Or a counter-revolution. And that is what we're promoting, is a counter-revolution. John mentioned that we've reestablished the state of North Carolina. That's like, what are you talking about, reestablish? A lot of people don't realize that there are two states of North Carolina that entered the American Union. Two different states entered the American Union called North Carolina. We're going by North Carolina, that's where we're from. This does apply to all states. This is the original state of North Carolina that entered the American Union November 21st, 1789, for the freemen, the free people of North Carolina. This is who ordained, this is who established the laws, set up they had an allegiance to their state. Their state was their country. With Reconstruction, a new state entered. It's the 39th state to enter the American Union. It entered by Congress under Military Order Number 120. The state that most people know of today as North Carolina entered via Military Order Number 120. Is that a government of consent? Is that a consensual government of that original party? So for U.S. citizens residing in North Carolina, we have to start thinking about what a body politic is. Well, we arrived at this consensus that, of course, the difference between these is one is de jure, one is de facto, and I usually have slides that go in to define that, but I'm going to skip over that part. But essentially, de jure is lawful, de facto is unlawful, but it's still being recognized and obeyed. So we reestablished the original state of North Carolina, and what is a state? A state, a lot of people think, well, the state is the government. Who's going to fix the roads? Oh, the state will fix, the state will do this, the state will do that. Well, think of a state as the people. The people is the state's the people. It's a body of people gathering together for the protection of their rights under a particular set of laws and under a specific morality. So that's what we did. Got together as a people and said, well, we don't see where this original state lost its statehood. Where did this state go? It still has a constitution. It just needs to be occupied. This was our Declaration of Reestablishment, which was sent to President Bill Clinton and de facto North Carolina Governor Jim Hunt at the time. There's all the signatures there. Just want to read just a little bit of it so you can get the idea. We, the inhabitants of North Carolina, know it is our duty and our right to reestablish North Carolina and to set an example for the nation to witness the reestablishment of a republic of free, sovereign people, peacefully, openly, and without violence, in a manner never before seen in history. So we gave notice. It's a legal methodology. This is what we're doing. We're not operating in the shadows or anything like that. Pre-Reconstruction Constitution, December 18th, 1776. That's the Constitution that we reestablished under. We hold regular elections. We have taxes that are due and a treasury. We have officers and representatives, regular public meetings, and we have citizens around the state. So this is where the battle comes in. How do we fight against this thing, right? So I remember I told you there's two states of North Carolina, the one that most people recognize, and this one that most people's never heard of until you came here today. So how do we fight against this thing? Well, we challenge the jurisdiction of the state of North Carolina on all kinds of issues. This could be anything, and that's the beauty about this argument, is that every law that follows after Reconstruction can be challenged. So we look at things like, we do little things like driver's licenses, permits, but you can go taxes, there's all kinds of different things. I'd love to see us maybe get into the home birth, homeschooling thing, but that's my own personal opinion. But here's some of our court records. We've had a lot of people going into court. A lot of times I'll go through those, but I won't today. They go on and on. We've actually been in every level of the North Carolina judicial system at one time. and we've had a case approach the Supreme Court. Is it our goal to get a ruling in court? Like the courts are going to go there and say, oh yeah, you're right, we're unlawful, here are the keys, right? No, that's not our goal. Our goal is awareness. We want to make Reconstruction a hot button topic. These are literally signs that we were standing out in front of a politician speaking, and we're out there with injudicial tyranny. This is my favorite on the right, get off the plantation. I don't know, I'm kind of a rebel that way, I guess. I just thought that one was interesting. So we want to make this a hot button topic. What else? What are the keywords that we can use? State citizenship, lawful states, nationalization. I think, let me say this, the ones that we're railing against, they're corrupting the country, we're blaming other people. They don't want us looking at the laws that they're using to pass the things that they're passing. And that's the thing that we need to start looking at. Let's study the things that they don't want us looking at. Did this just happen to North Carolina, or does it apply to every state? It applies to every state, even the ones that entered after Reconstruction, because those new states that entered afterward aren't on equal footing with the original states. There's, of course, Virginia. They were directly reconstructed by military force. Of course, our state there, North Carolina, below it. So it does apply to every state. That's why it's America's remedy and not just a specific state. So what we want to do is reestablish the states. Of course, we already have our case study of North Carolina. Are there other states that are interested? Well, I'm not going to say that we've had hundreds and hundreds from every state, but we have had individuals from different states interested, and we've counted up about 13. We had a webcast, and we had a lot of different people call in, and so there is interest in 13 different states. So what can you do? How can you be a part of America's remedy? First of all, remain prayerful and hopeful. I think a lot of people that I talk to, they've just lost hope. I mean, we say that God can do anything and that He can move mountains. We need to believe in it. And our actions need to reflect that belief. So the first thing we need to do is remain prayerful and hopeful. The next thing we need to do is get educated. I'm going to show you some materials here in just a minute where you can dig into this a little deeper. Tell your family, friends, and your neighbors. We have to spread the word about this in lawful government. Schedule a seminar with John Ainsworth. John and his wife Jill travel around in a little hybrid car. I always mention this. They'll go wherever you want. Donate to the cause. It takes a lot of money, obviously, travel around. And also the court cases and things like that. You'll find there's two sides to what we're doing. The first is America's Remedy, americasremedy.com. By the way, I've got this really in big print. So if you've got a camera phone and you just want to get that real quick, that's got both of our web addresses, and it's got our little Facebook thing down there at the bottom. That'd be a perfect way to do that. Yes, it might. I'm wired, so if somebody wants to hit that, that'd be just fine. So those are our two sides of America's Remedy. That's the educational side, and ncrepublic.org. That is the reestablishing of the original state of North Carolina, our court cases, and so forth. I'll just go ahead and let you all get that if you'd like. It's not often when you're speaking and you ask people to get their phones out. Usually it's the opposite. So let me show you a few things that we've got. We've got brochures. They are at our booth, hopefully, if it's not underwater at this point. We also have, to start you out, this is what I would recommend. We've got this on a DVD, but this is also on YouTube. All you've got to do is go to YouTube and type in counter-revolution alternative. If you only typed in those 3 words, or into Google, you would get this video. This is a 10-minute video, and it covers the foundation, what went wrong, how we can fix it, and the result on the other side, if the people would decide to act. So that's the counter-revolution. We have those on DVD. Let's see another. Now, if you want to step it up a little bit, John did a presentation down in Maggie Valley a few years ago. Really good thing. It was like a whole weekend seminar, and he's got about a little less than 5 hours of video on this. This is actually a 2-disc set, so it's a little more costly. I think these are just a few dollars usually, but these are a little bit more. I think we're selling for like 25 or something. But there's 2 DVDs in here. And there's also a student quiz. So if you've got homeschoolers or even just for adults, there's a quiz on here that's got a bunch of questions. Or if you had like a group, this might actually be a good thing to watch with a group. I would definitely highly recommend that. I would like to turn it over again to John, if you want, do you want to get, see if we can get a couple of questions?
Yeah, we can probably get a couple questions in.
All right.
Thanks, Cliff. And one thing I would like to say is we are about giving people hope. We find we're frustrated. We don't know what to do. We don't know what direction to go in. We want to give, with the truth, you can start standing on a solid foundation. But most people don't really have an ear for the truth. Most people hear the truth, and I think this is biblical. They hear the truth, but their ear is really attuned for pragmatism, what might work, what's better over here. We're looking for people who want to find something that they can focus on to get America out of this, that you're motivated, you're willing to stand up and fight for. We got to get the spirit back. And when I look around at people, I just see people with slumped shoulders like, well, let's stand up. Let's stand on a solid foundation of what happened, don't accept it anymore, and say, prove you're lawful. Prove this stuff. Because the person who stands at the loudest, the person who stands up, if we start standing up, and how many people is it going to take? Is it going to take a majority? The answer is absolutely no. I figure 1/2 of 1%. Think of it. If you have a state with 1 million people, 10,000 would be 1%. 5,000 is a half. If you had 5,000 people for every million, how many people are in Virginia? 5 million, 6 million, 7 million? So 35,000 people? You had 35,000 people showing up in Richmond. We're tired of it. We're not putting up with it. Prove your lawfulness. Quit giving us these Supreme Court stuff. They'll have to start listening to us, and then it'll be a snowball effect. It'll start going into other states. People go, oh, that's how they did it. So our whole thing is an awareness of getting people to go, aha, man, that feels good. I know the problem now. Let's fix this thing. Let's stand up as a body. Let's go out there and start challenging this thing again. Let's get some hope in this. Otherwise, all you have a choice to do is stay in the death spiral. And that's what you're going to hand your children. Yes, sir.
Question, very important, playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
You said the 14th Amendment was passed by a supermajority of these radical Republicans, correct?
No.
Oh,
All Congress does is propose it. It has to be adopted by the states. And in the Constitution, I think it's Article 7? Article 5 or Article 7. Article 5 or 7 shows you the proper procedure to amend the Constitution. Forcing states to adopt it is not one of them.
all right, so it was never passed as an amendment legally, that's what you're trying to say.
It was an unconstitutional act that forced its passage. The Reconstruction Acts were unconstitutional. They annulled the states. They changed body politics. They said only this new state can come in. They are required to pass the 14th Amendment.
Who organized that, and how was that?
Radical Republicans. You had Thaddeus Stevens, you had Fessenden, you had Bingham, you had James G. Blaine.
So it was never a majority of Congress, you're saying?
It was a majority of Congress. What's the function of it?
See, I'm
What's
trying
the
to say
function
if
of the?
somebody
What's the
tells
function
me,
of the?
hey, that was passed legally by
What?
Congress, if somebody tells me that.
Who? Nobody ever has. Got to remember, we've taken this into every single court. They've never argued it was passed lawfully.
Well, how
Nobody
do I
will
answer
pass
somebody
it.
that says it was passed legally?
Okay, by what you saw, was that a lawful method? Is that the method, free people? Is that the method prescribed in the Constitution
No,
of
they
how
may
to
say it
amend the
was legal.
Constitution?
They may say it was legal. Legal and moral are two different
Okay,
things, as you know.
constitutional and unconstitutional are two different things.
True.
Okay, if it's unconstitutional, an unconstitutional law is declared void. It can demand no obedience. Like Cliff said, what gives an unconstitutional act functionality? People giving it obedience. In law, an unconstitutional act demands no obedience. You have no requirement to demand it or to obey it in law. If you choose to, because you get benefit from it, or you're too cowardly to do anything about it, then that's fine. But it's 1 o'clock right now, or 2 o'clock. We got to go. I mean, but that's where it gets to. We got to stand up and we got to get it back.
Okay, I'll put
Is there somewhere where we can redirect the questions? I know
Well,
the next speaker's
yeah.
coming in. We want to get
We'll go to the table.
Yeah, let's go to the table.